Hey guys, this is Maylani Hawk. Thanks so much for tuning in to Why Not Me Academy. I have one of my favorite people on today. I know I always talk about how great the guests are, but I really love this man so much. He's one of my mentors, one of my friends. I'm so grateful that he's here. So thank you, Thayer, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and stop with all this nonsense.
I love Terry. I love him.
You're the best. You're my favorite.
Oh, stop. I'm excited about the next 45 minutes because this guy has always got amazing stuff going on. So let's jump in right now. Just how many businesses do you even own right now?
So I am at 12 right now. I had 13, but we've merged one of them into another one. So we're down to 12 businesses right this minute.
Oh, you're down to 12. Down to 12. This man actually helped. So not only are we friends and I love him, but he was the one that we were at a mastermind together, and on a flight home just last year, he was like, what is your husband doing? Like, why is he still working for the man? Why is he still in corporate America? You guys know how to make money. Like, get him out of that. And I don't know why, but it was like, I just needed him to wake me up. And I came home to my husband that night and I was like, it's time. It's time. Like, take off the security blanket. It's time. We're going to do this. And my husband left his job, and now it's like crazy coronavirus time. And it's like, we've had so many people, like his employer, come back and say, do you want to come back? Like, everybody's like, are you sure? You're not going to go back? You're not going to go back? And it's like, no, like, we're not making a U-turn. We are going full force on following the rest of our dreams. Cause I've been living this life for, 7 years or whatever. And it's so fun to have him be a part of it. So thanks to Terry and him encouraging me to buy my husband a Rolex and to jump into like following your dreams, like what we always talk about on here, of stop dreaming and to start doing. And so it wasn't just me, but he helped me convince my husband that it was time for him to do the same thing, which is a hard feat. So yes, he's got like 12 different businesses going on right now, but I want to take it back. 7 years ago, what did your life look like?
Oh man. So it was chaos. It was catastrophe. It was running around with your hair on fire, even though I don't have any.
You did
for a long. I did before it. So it was really crazy. It was very much where I felt like I had to do everything myself. And I did. I wouldn't bring people on, and it was there was no life whatsoever. Like I forgot what color my house was, put it that way. I would leave before the sun went up, and I would come home after the sun went down. And it was just like, I didn't have a life. My business completely, totally owned me, and I was a slave to my business.
Yeah. Yeah. So what got you to switch from being that, if you've read the book, like what switched from becoming a technician to a higher management level?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things, speaking of book, it wasn't something that I was initially going to have in my answer when you just started saying that, but book, the E-Myth was the first eye opener that, yeah, there's a roadmap to getting from being a technician to being a manager to being an entrepreneur, that it's really possible. And there's a way of doing it. But what opened my mind was, speaking of masterminds and speaking of somebody just kind of saying something that clicked, is I was at my very first mastermind. And I remember it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday mastermind in New Orleans. So I fly down there on Thursday, and my head, my brain space was in Raleigh still. Like, what's going on? I couldn't, and I'm there just a couple of days, right? And most of it was throughout the weekend. So, I'll go to this mastermind, and a very dear friend of both of ours was up there speaking, and she was sitting there talking about how she's getting, her business she lived in Florida or lives in Florida. Her business is in Florida. And she's talking about how she's going to go on this month-long journey, backpacking or bike ride. I don't remember something. All I heard was month gone, away from business. Business is still running and all this. And I'm like, mind blown. I'm like, there's no way, like my entire business would be shot if I did that. So she's like, yeah, talking about how this is going to be running and this person's doing this and this system. And I'm like, and I remember, that was like 4:00 in the afternoon or something. It was like, late afternoon. And shortly after that, after you finish a mastermind, everyone gets together to bar, dinner, whatever, and it is networking. And I just I couldn't get that out of my head. It would just kept playing over and over. And I'm like, how is that possible? So later on that night, Christy and I would go to sleep, and it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I jump up and I'm like, I just I had all the answers.
Yeah.
I was like, it all makes sense. And I'm like pacing back and forth. And I remember I kicked something in the room. It was pitch black. And I let out this yelp. Christy jumps out of the bed. What is going on? And I'm like, I've got it figured out. I was like, we're going to go home and we're going to fire everybody. And when I say fire everybody, they were all technicians, right? They were all mechanics. They were all carpenters. They were like, things that really didn't serve me in my business. I was trying to run a business the wrong way. I didn't have managers where I could have subcontracted out contractors. I didn't need that. That was just more of a headache. What I needed more management in my business. I needed to hire the right people. So I was like, I've got this whole thing all figured out. And, I went home and literally on Monday morning, I met all my guys out back and I said, sorry guys, I hated to do this. That's the hard part of being a business owner, but I let 16 carpenters go that day. I had 5 trucks, trailers. I had tools, equipment. A whole 2,000 square foot warehouse full of just crap. So and then I had all these houses going where my employees were doing a majority of the build. And literally I said, you know what? I don't care. I have to stop this like terrible road that I've been on. I need to stop it. And I need to reprogram how I live and how I do business. So I remember I kept one guy. So I had one guy, he became a project manager of mine. Him and I went I went one direction, he went another direction. I threw my tools out on, I went out to job sites. I did whatever it took to get all this stuff organized, figure out where I was, subcontract out the rest, redesign my business so that all the next houses that we were building, flipping, whatever, we had a different system in place for it. And I had to get in the trenches to kind of refigure out how to do all this stuff instead of me being, that control freak that thought I can do everything. And that was the eye opener. And literally it was like 6 or 7 months. And then I started hiring people. I started, going to these next steps of building an actual business instead of creating a massive job for myself that I was, that's what I did. I created a job for myself. I did well. It was a high paying job, but I didn't have a life. I was at the expense of my life, my kids, my wife, working 80, 100, 120 hours a week. It gets old. And I did that for years. And I can remember for years, I didn't even go on a vacation. I can remember Christy was going to the beach with some of her family or whatever. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't spare one single minute away from my business.
Yeah. As you're talking, it reminds me of when me and my husband were both in corporate America and we treasured those 10 days off a year that you'd get. And it was some people were like, well, do you want to go on this vacation? Do you want to go on this one and this one? And I'm like, we only have 10 days off. We only have 10 vacation days in corporate America at the time. And it was like, well, how are you guys doing all those different things? And now I look at that and I think, oh my gosh, that was my life. That was living by those 10 magical days that we would get compared to now. But I also love what you were talking about of that, you had this epiphany and it was we're starting from scratch. But how many years had that business been going? You built that thing up.
So there was different phases of businesses, right? So I started off where I was a carpenter. I was working for someone, working for my dad. And then I would start off my own crew. So we're talking every bit of 15 years that I ran like that.
For
and
sure.
there
Like,
was, I didn't have those 10 days.
yeah, yeah, you didn't even have those 10 days. Oh yeah, that was my point, is you didn't even have those 10 days that I used to covet. But also, like, you had built this thing up for 15 years, and then you had a dream of having that lifestyle that you got to control. And you started thinking about it, started dreaming about it, and then you took the jump. Like, you were ready to say, as hard as it is to say goodbye to the last 15 years that I've built up, let me see, because I believe there's something better out there. And I love that. I love that. I remember, like, I thought that flipping houses was going to be like the finish line for me. Like, that was going to be heaven. And when I got there and I built up that business, I was like, oh man, I'm still not finding the joy. And some people have, that's great. I'm glad that works for you. But for me, obviously, Airbnbs helped me with that. Courses, podcasting, all these other things helped me find that joy that really allowed me that control. But so many people just talk about it. And they're so afraid to leave that stuff that they've worked so hard for, that dream. So I think it's important to recognize that sometimes goals are supposed to change. That what if you had just said, for those 15 years, I just want to build up a successful construction company, which you did, but then it was taking over your life. And so your goals had to change. And now you're running 12 successful businesses. Who even knew that was possible? But you wouldn't have been able to do that if you wouldn't have made that jump.
Exactly. And it was like when I was pacing and I stubbed my toe and woke my wife up, she jumps up. Like, all that was going through my head was, other than I've got it all figured out, was, or no, sorry, not at that time, but prior to that time, from the time she spoke all the way up to that time, I was thinking to myself, you know what? Why not me be able to own my own business versus my business owning me? And why can't I go on a month-long trip and come back to, everything is still rolling and operating? It was just like mind-blowing to me after so many years of being stuck in that world.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that. Like, I know that we're both entrepreneurs, so we have times that we work really hard, but overall, you've been able to master your time. So what would you say? I know there's times that you're like building a new business and it's crunch time, but what does your life look like now that you're allowed to do that you couldn't 7 years ago?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about now, but I'm going to shelf that for a second, because I'm going to talk about a year and for several years prior to that, because we just started a new venture a year ago. And so I've been rebuilding that. So I jumped back in the trenches because this has just been and it's been awesome. I mean, we literally, so I'll get back to that in a minute. So a year ago, for 4 consecutive years, our kids would get out of school. When they get out of school, end of May, June, whatever it is, they would get out of school and we would literally pack up and we'd leave for the entire summer, 2 months, 2.5 months, whatever it was. And we would be gone traveling throughout the US or different islands and, just wherever we wanted to go. Yeah. And we did that. You did an awesome
California trip that I am from California, and I'm jealous of the trip you did of just taking.
I want to do that one again.
I'm so jealous. I love that coast drive. I love the train ride. I love everything. Like, the things you did were awesome. And I love that, again, Terry's one of the people that, like, how you're supposed to surround yourself with people who like inspire you because they help uplift you. Like, I love having a friend in Terry and Christy that we can talk about the awesome things we're doing. How do I say this? And it doesn't come across as braggy because it's our lives. You know what I mean? Like, we know that we both work our butts off and then we do awesome things. The first time I did that, take that whole summer break off with my kids, everybody was like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay back home? Like, and it's like, yeah, my husband's with me. Like, we're all here together, but people don't get that. But on this call, whoever's watching, whoever's listening, I want you to know that it is possible and it can be you. Okay, so sorry, I cut you off. Let's go back. So you've done like vacations, you take months off. Tell me more about what life looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, we would come back a week before they had to go back to school. Now we homeschool our kids, but that was, a couple of years ago. We just started a little better than a year ago homeschooling. But we would come back and honestly, that would be the summers. And I had this rule, like, I couldn't be in Raleigh, North Carolina longer than 6 weeks at a time. I would have to take this break. So 6 weeks, boom, whether we had some type of work trip, conference, whatever, Or if we didn't have that gap, Chrissy and I'd be like, all right, let's go to blank for, 3 days or something, just to go, just because. And we could do that, right? If we wanted to do, not come to the office for a day or a week, we don't have to come to the office. Now, today is a little different, but it's different than it was when I first started, right? I have the blueprint. I've done this before. So we literally started a new business in February of last year. And what are we in, basically
March,
1 year
April.
later, 13 months later, it's already a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah.
And it's almost to running itself, right? So we're putting the right people in place, the right CRMs, the right systems, the right everything, the right metrics in place, so that we don't have to be here in the middle of it. So in a very short amount of time, that's going to be operating, and we'll be back to freedom again. Not that this is taking over my life. It's something I choose to do, but I could still do what I want when I want. We have things in place.
Yeah, I think I think it's probably the same way. And tell me if I'm wrong, but like when me and my husband got married, it was like, okay, we want to be able to retire by the time we're 40. And the closer we got to that number, it was like, well, what does that look like? Are we just going to be sitting on the beach the whole time for, after 40? Or like, no, we actually love what we do. Like this. We kind of are living our retirement because we love what we do. We love the different companies that we run. But so this is what used to be called retirement, but now this is just, that lifestyle by design. Still, I like having work. I like having projects. I like employing other people and bringing them income so that they can feed their families. Like, I love that part, but I'm doing it on my time. So it's kind of like, again, changing those goals. The goal isn't what retirement was called 20 years ago. Now it's that lifestyle by design that we get to do what we want to do on our schedules. And sometimes I like working. I do like running companies. You know what I'm saying? Are you
1,000,000%. I will never stop doing what I'm doing. At some point in time, I'll readjust some things. I won't, there's things, but it'll never stop. Like I love what I do. I wouldn't have started another business this far in that's very active had I not loved what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love building businesses. I love building teams. I love being in real estate. I love crunching numbers. I love negotiating. Like, if I could sit there and just negotiate with people all day long, I'd be the happiest person on the planet.
I love it. He's such a negotiation nerd. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But you're also like the hiring guru. Like, I love how you talked about 7 years ago, that was part of it. Like, I'm firing everyone, but then it took 6-7 months to kind of figure out where you wanted to be again. But then you wanted to hire so that you were creating a business, not a new job for you. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, I know like you've got a course, you do live events all about hiring and stuff. But tell us just in a nutshell what you can about, maybe mistakes people make in hiring, or tell us a little bit about what you talk about in hiring. I know that you get paid lots of money to do the full thing, but just give us a little nutshell about why hiring is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when I started that hiring journey, and not just hiring carpenters, that's easy, right? Carpenters, laborers, that's easy. Well, it used to be easy. Now it's even a little bit more difficult to do that nowadays. But hiring management and getting the right people in the right seats, that was difficult. And what would happen is, okay, say I'm just even hiring an assistant, right? I'm hiring for an assistant. I go and put a job ad on Craigslist, Indeed.com, whatever. And boom, all these applicants come flooding in. I get 100, 150, 200 resumes coming in.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, who has time? I don't care if that's all you're doing. Who has time to look through that many resumes, right? Yeah. And so what happens? You get all these resumes. You're like, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, boom, we'll grab this one. You grab a good 10, 15, 20 of them, look over the resumes. And, this is early on in my career. And you're just kind of like figuring things out, who you want to interview based on that. And these resumes are just crap. I mean, it's just like whatever somebody wants you to know about them. They just kind of throw it on there, and half it's false, or just like it's copy, it's marketing, right? They're marketing themselves.
Yeah.
It doesn't show the true personality of the person that you're going to get. So I ended up going through the hire, fire stage for many years. And that was holding me back from being able to really build and explode my business. So I went through, I spent so much money and time on different coaches, and I would get this coach. I was like, somebody surely has to have the blueprint on how to hire someone properly.
Yeah.
And I would get a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, all these different coaches. And I took all this stuff and I've developed this new mindset of how do I automate everything I do? I put it all together. I created a system. So I started putting it out there. And boom, it's working. I'm getting great people, like top recruits, and they're wanting to come. And it's taken me literally a couple of hours per hire. That's it. Like not hours and hours and hours and hours. Most of the time, I interview 1 to 3 people, depending on the position. And I look at 1 to 3 resumes as well. If I'm going to interview them, those are the only resumes I look at. And I just look at it for context and conversation to have with them while I'm sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. So this is all working for me. I'm like, all right, great. I figured out this whole thing and we're doing this for ourselves. But then what happened was I would go to my bookkeeper's office and I'm sitting there with them, and he's like, yeah, I'm having a hard time with hiring. I just lost another person. I hired this staffing agency or headhunter, whatever you want to call it. And I had to pay 20% of her first year's salary up front to get this person. I mean, isn't that slavery, buying people, right? Whatever. That's what it sounds like to me. But they guarantee it. In his case, 100 days. Well, it was like something ridiculous. Like on a day number 109, she quit. So he's out 20% of $60,000. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And he had done this a couple of times. And that was the most dramatic situation, 109 days, 9 days after the guarantee ended. But he would have some other ones. But then I went to another office, hear that. Another person I'm doing business, same thing, right? I kept hearing this. So I was like, you know what? What if I barter services? Like, you do my bookkeeping, I'll teach you how to hire, we'll come up with something, and I would do it, and boom, it worked. Went to the next person, same thing, boom, it worked, boom, it worked. So I did this like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, it's working for everybody. It's not just for me, it's a proven system. This actually works. So then I started talking about it, and then people would reach out to me. I would do one-on-one coaching, and it's been a game changer. So I've critique this system constantly. We're in the process of turning into a digital course, but right now I'm doing a group coaching. Like, we're getting ready to do one next week. We have over 20 people on this group coaching. I just launched it like a couple of days ago. I think I have 21 people already paid to be on that one. And we're just trying to help people build their businesses and own their businesses by putting the right people in the right seats.
Yeah. And I love that this works this works with, one-man show looking to hire your first person, as well as big corporations that are, instead of hiring it out or, what do you call it? Getting an agency to fill the hole. Like this is for anyone, small business to huge business. This works, right?
It any industry, small or large, like it doesn't matter. None of that matters whatsoever. Like, it could even be to the point where in a very large business that has a whole HR department, for example, maybe they have, 5 or 6 people that are just doing hiring. Yeah. We can limit that down to, say, 1 person hiring and take those other 4 people and allocate them into another part of the business that's producing in a different way, or free up funds here and put them here, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. It goes from my coaching starts off from a solopreneur like me, a replication of me, like getting out of your head, teaches you like how to know, making a decision to hire, like how who you should hire. And I mean, it starts from there all the way through to, it even has a part of creating company culture and setting them up for their first 90 days and how to maximize with this hire after that point and beyond.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say is your biggest piece of advice for someone who is still struggling as like feeling like a slave in their own business or to their employer, or to their job?
Yeah. Two pieces of that. One, hiring the right people, getting the right people in the right seats. Number one. Number two, what has always been the answer for me is having the right coach, the right mentor, the right mastermind, the right people to follow, the right people to listen to, the right podcasts to listen to, books reading, like knowledge, mentorship is what got me to where I needed to be. Because 7 years ago, I didn't have a coach.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. So I went to this first, I got this first coach, and then it led me to a mastermind, and I get to that mastermind. And it was just like, aha. And things have just doubled and tripled every year, meaning the knowledge piece to be able to allow me to grow.
Yeah.
So mentorship.
Yeah. As we've been talking, I've been looking at your sign in the back, and it's not the money I'm after, it's freedom. And I think like sometimes we title these podcast episodes before we launch, but sometimes we do it after. And we had talked about how this one was going to be called Why Not Me, to be able to own my business versus my business owning me. And as we've talked, I feel like it's why not me to have that freedom that I've always dreamed about? Why not me to have, and that's one of the things that Terry is awesome at. So Terry, how do people find you after this? Where can they reach out to you or follow you or whatever you?
Well, the easiest place that brings all of my products, social media, everything together is I have a website. It's terrythayerii.com, TerryThayerii.com. My social medias are all Terry Thayer II. And then our hiring course, if you're interested in that, is that simple, hiringcourse.com.
Awesome. Hiringcourse.com and Terry Thayer II. Thank you so much, Terry. Always fun to talk to you, and thanks for being on today. Any final words of advice?
I think the final words of advice are the same thing. I'll never veer away from it. It's just mentorship, coach, education, learning, never stop growing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me a part of it.